Asha comes out of many people in my own family. I have lots of female people, characters in my family who are characters. I mean, they are strong-willed, they are assassins of joy, and they don't mean to be.
I'm Nathan Maharaj. This is Kobo in Conversation. My guest is Anita Rau Badami, author of several novels, including the Commonwealth Prize-winning book, The Hero's Walk. Her new book is Asha in Her Garden. It's the story of a woman named Asha, who now lives in Montreal, but left Bangalore in India many years ago. We learn about her childhood. We learn about her children. We learn about her friends and the life she's made for herself. Anita Rau Badami, welcome to Kobo.
Thank you for having me.
I described Asha's circumstances a little bit, but maybe you could speak a little bit more and give us a sense of who she is and how she came to occupy you in this book.
So Asha is a driven, ambitious, tough woman who had a childhood that was undernourished, if I might put it that way, whether it was her financial condition or she did not lack for affection, but she always had this feeling that she was missing out. She was the unwanted guest, the dependent in her uncle's home, where she and her mother ended up after her father died. And she grows up into this woman who wants to get her own way in life. She is determined to find some way to get everything she wants. She meets a man named Suresh and ends up in Montreal. And that's the story of the book, how she gets there and what happens to her while she's there. I was attracted to this woman because I have always had strong-willed women in my family. Mm-hmm. And so most of the characters that I write are pretty strong-willed. Mm. And this woman in particular, I wanted to explore how she navigates the huge changes that occur in her life and the massive tragedies that hit her. And so basically that's how this book started.
Yeah. Much of this book is concerned with Asha's past, but we begin at the beginning of the book with a dying tree being cut down in her garden in Montreal in 2023. Tell me why you brought the reader into the book at the beginning as they're observing this kind of ending.
I think the beginning of the book came rather late in the writing of the book. For me, I have a maple tree in my house, in my garden. It's a silver maple. It's 120 years old. And I was reminded of its antiquity and its place in my life by my neighbor, actually. My neighbor had an equally hoary old ash tree, which it was huge. And it between these two trees, I think 4 gardens were completely in the shade. That ash tree had been infected by the emerald ash borer, which is, this bug that's been destroying the ash tree population in North America generally. And so this woman had to get the tree cut. So we were standing there and she was in tears. And she turns to me and she says, "You've got to promise me." She was completely distraught at the downing of this tree. And she turns to me and says, "You've got to promise me that you're not going to kill the grandfather of your garden." And I thought, oh, that is such a wonderful way of thinking about an ancient tree, which has been there longer than I have, which hopefully will be there longer than my existence. And, and she says, it keeps watch over us, remember that. Don't get rid of it unless it's dying. And again, that thought that these old trees that we pass by on a daily basis, that we have in our backyards or in our gardens, the thought that they're keeping watch over us in lieu of the ancestors or the grandparents that we've left behind, that we don't have with us, it would probably resonate particularly well with this character in my book, Asha, who has left her history behind. And I think it was also connected with this recurring feeling I have that for immigrants from anywhere who have moved away from the country of their ancestry for any reason, there is this enormous traumatic sense of loss. Because who is going to be carrying that history forward? If the history of your people, of your language, your culture, your family means anything at all, who is going to be interested enough? As a writer, I am. I love old photographs. I gather conversations, and not necessarily just my family, anybody's. And that's how I preserve stories. But the generation after me, is my son interested in any of this? Who's going to be pushing this story forward? Who's going to be taking it forward? So these were the things that were churning around in my head when I started this book, and I think that's where the connections came about, and somehow the cutting down of a tree became the perfect starting point for this particular book.
I felt like the Asha we met in the beginning is also, she's so different from the person we spend so much time with. So there's a choice there as well. It's not just the scene, and it's not just the tree. It's, you're giving us character, and then you're taking character away.
Yes.
Tell me about that game you're playing with the reader.
Okay, so when the book opens, Asha is in her 70s. She's at that stage in her life when she's had enough time to reflect on the person she had been or was forced to become in order to reach this point in her life. And there are regrets. She's not just a hard, unfeeling person. There are certain decisions she has taken in her life in order to provide her family with the kind of life she wanted for herself. And she's aware of this. She's an intelligent woman. And at this point in her life, at 70, she knows that, she's done many wrongs to many people in her life, but she has been wronged as well, and she is somewhat unforgiving. But she's not devoid of affection. She is an affectionate person. She might come across as a different kind of person, and to herself too. She knows. She's aware. The downing of this tree, and the fact that it coincides also in the beginning with the fact that her daughter is going to have an art exhibition, and the daughter has become the keeper of memory in a way that's completely unexpected for the mother. These things, along with her own introspective position at that point in time, sort of create the drive for the rest of the book. It sort of opens up for her to interrogate everything that she's done, for the other characters in the book to, come back into her story and tell us a little more about her.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you speak about the book in that way, because part of the thing I was trying to figure out as I was reading it was, I'm enjoying this. This is very good. I don't understand, and I'm a naive reader, so we'll just put that right on the table. I don't understand the mechanics of plot and things like that. That it misses me. I don't know why. It'll be a lifelong journey for me to actually see the pieces of a book in motion. But I did question, what's making me, what's the thing that's driving me forward through this? Because yes, it's a story and there are characters, and I love voice and I love character, and that will propel me a great distance. But I thought, there's something else happening here. This isn't just that, but there's something pulling me, and it's invisible and I can't figure it out. And I think you put your finger on it when you said it is about taking stock. And what we're actually seeing in the book is, we know she's going to get to old age. That's already confirmed. We're dealing with this person living the rest of her life, and how will this all amount to that? And that was kind of, I guess, the tension was, I had this image of a well-adjusted old woman, and suddenly I was thrown in with this ambitious, prickly, difficult woman going through all the trials and tribulations of life, and I was thinking, when will you mellow? Because I know it happens.
Yes.
She works in human resources.
Yes.
Why that field? Why is that her job?
I thought it would be funny for this, or amusing. It was a personal feeling of amusement that this woman who is so prickly, as you put it, and who has so much of trouble with various members of her family, so many resentments. She's like boiling inside that facade of decency and calmness and niceness, in a sense. And, and for her to be in charge of human resources, where she's dealing with other people's problems when she can barely resolve her own personal relationship-related problems, I thought that was truly ironic. And she's good at her job. She's good because she has that necessary distance between herself and the people whose problems she's dealing with. And like I said, she's an intelligent woman. She knows that in order to stay with that job and do well in her company, she has to be good at that. So for her, it's a job. But her own personal life is a mess. And it cannot be a job. It's her life. She doesn't know how to deal with the people in her life. And I'm not going to give away anything by saying that she does have a fractured relationship with some of the members of her family. Mm-hmm. So that the irony was too rich for me to avoid.
But it's kind of perfect because, it made me think of there's a scene where there's a chapter where we get a picture of the Mohan family, Asha's family, at the dinner table. And we get a few snapshots kind of over the years. There's chatter. It's a lively dinner table. But Asha is removed from it. Mm-hmm. And over time, we see that she's drifting further and further out. It goes from, mom, and explaining the inside joke, to like, mom, you don't care, never mind. Mm-hmm. And they kind of cut loose any idea of bringing her in. And one thing I thought was, that hurts. I think I've been through phases like that in my own parenting journey, where work was crowding out my ability to engage with my kids. But I also thought, even as I related to it as a man and a breadwinner, I thought, we don't often see women on this path in fiction. Tell me about that. That Asha is largely the breadwinner for. That's the plan. We'll talk a bit about Suresh. He's fascinating, but like Asha is occupying a role we traditionally associate with the male, like the patriarch kind of thing. Yeah.
But this is the thing that's often ignored in real life, as in fiction. A lot of, and I think this is true of contemporary society. There are lots of families where the woman becomes the breadwinner. Just, there's no option but for her to be the breadwinner. And in this particular case, again, like a lot of educated immigrant families, Suresh, who would conventionally be the breadwinner, is jobless because he was a journalist in India. He cannot find anywhere to do the same kind of work here in Canada because he doesn't know enough about this country. He himself feels like a fraud at the idea of writing as a journalist about a country which is completely new to him. How do you do that? You need to know the politics, you need to know the society, you need to know culture, you need to have a fairly deep knowledge of a country before you start writing about it with any authority. So, as he says, he'd be writing a tourist brochure probably. So she becomes the de facto breadwinner of the family. She's come with her job. She's doing amazingly well at it. And he ends up being in charge of the children. So this reversal of roles, of traditional roles, is something that we don't even acknowledge. It's happening all around us. I know so many people. And because there's some kind of embarrassment associated with it for some people, they start, they don't acknowledge the fact that the husband is the man is the person who's looking after the children, while the woman is out there bringing home the bacon, a manner of speaking. So I know so many people like this, or well-educated males who are, who end up doing something they consider personally demeaning or humiliating, given their educational qualifications. Whereas the woman, the wife, is willing to jump in and take any old job and somehow manages to climb higher and higher in the company's hierarchy. And that's happened. I mean, because for some reason the woman might be more able to swallow her pride and take on any kind of job. So there's that, I'm not sort of being sexist or anything in that, but still there is that. I mean, and it's common enough that we should be writing more about it.
So, and writing about what you captured with that alienation that comes with that. It's not about. It's not just all a rah-rah, look at her go story.
No.
It's also like, look at the price she pays.
Yes, because she's lost her children, especially one of them, in a way that she wouldn't have had she been more a participatory person in this family unit. And she is not just dealing with the hurt of losing her past, her history. She's also trying to adjust to life here, which she hasn't had time to just settle in. She's just jumped in. She's the one doing the work. She's trying to cope with the children, but obviously at some point that drops away because someone has to make a living, and for her, it's important that her children have the life that she felt she was denied. Suresh, her husband, is far more easygoing. For him, it's all about giving those children as much affection. That is wealth as far as he's concerned, because that was missing from his life as a child. I mean, other than his mother and his sisters, but his father was a tough man, and
his father was kind of a black hole that for all the love that he and his sisters and his mother may have shared, his father just sucked it all out of the room.
Totally. And so he has a different reason for being the kind of person he is. But in the in the end, it just the relationship that the feelings they had for each other and the very qualities that they had cherished in each other in the beginning are the very ones that pushed them apart by, after a few years.
Well, I wanted to ask about that, about them as a partnership, because they are quite dissimilar, yet they make a kind of sense. I think we all have some experience. I was thinking actually, when I learned that Asha works in human resources, there was a part of her that just kind of clicked into place for me. I was like, aha, I see you. I know you. I've worked with you. And I thought, not only do I see you, and I've reached a point in my life now where I've met enough spouses of colleagues that I no longer expect anything. Because you just don't know. People partner up. And then you learn something you're like, oh, you're so buttoned up at work. And and this guy's like a surfer dude. It's like, oh.
I know.
So tell me about crafting that. Was it a sense of, you've got this main character who is so closed off, who is so driven. Is it a question of adding a seasoning that contrasts with that? Is it just that the character himself is interesting and you're like, I'm going. Suresh is entering the book.
Yes.
You two are getting married. We're going to figure this out.
Yes. Actually, it was more about that. I wanted him to be a romance writer. And so it started with that. And then, I started thinking about what kind of person he might be in order to be able to do all the things that he does with his skills as a writer. And then I started thinking actually about myself as a writer. I've been writing since I was 17, and all the ways in which I've used my own writing abilities. I used to do all kinds of things. I was a copywriter, I was a freelance journalist, I wrote children's fiction, and this primarily came from the fact that my father said, you want to be a writer, go for it, but I'm supporting you through university only till up to your master's degree, if you decide to do a master's. And after that, you're on your own. You have to make your writing work for you. So I took that seriously. For me, whether it was telling a story, whether it was writing as a journalist, it had to make me a living. So the writing went in all kinds of directions, and Suresh was born out of that sense of what a writer could be and what a writer might want to do with their skills. And then I started thinking about, okay, where would a character like this in that time in India, in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, what would be this character? What kind of character would this be? So obviously for somebody in that time in India, in that social milieu, with the kind of father Suresh had, he had to have some kind of stubborn sense of himself as a writer, because even back then, journalism was respected. But for somebody like his father, journalism was not really a job. For a man. He probably wanted his son to be a doctor or an engineer or something. So this man had enough of a sense of self-worth, but he was also a gentle kind of fellow. He was curious about the world, which is why I introduced him to Asha in that college setting. And of course, when she slaps him down with some rather harsh words, he just bounces back. He's curious about this woman. Who is this woman? My generation at this point in time, she's determined, she's articulate. So these are the things, that attracted him to her. And the reverse attracted her to him, because she thought, oh, who is this polite guy who's busy saying thank you for everything? Who respects me, who thinks I'm gorgeous even though I'm not.
He is a writer of romance novels, as you say, and apparently, I'm so intrigued that you said that was the point you wanted to get him to, that was going to be a character of him, a dominant character of his life's work, and we have to see him work up to that. Why romance novels? Why wasn't he an acclaimed literary fiction writer?
Well, he wanted to make a quick buck.
There you go.
I have not. So I think there was a little bit of that pride thing in there. He might not have been a successful romance writer. Yes, romance is a genre. There's a lot of romance fiction out there. Some of them are wildly popular, and some of them, I don't know, they just disappear, I suppose, some of those authors. I don't read romance myself, I don't read them now, I haven't for a long time. But I remember when I was about 11 years old, there was a girl in my, I don't remember which grade this was. There's this girl in my class who used to be an avid consumer of what were called Mills and Boon's romances. And I think it was some kind of Harlequin romance kind of thing, but it was British, maybe.
Yep.
And she used to sit in the back of the class, and it didn't matter. The chemistry teacher would be droning on, the physics teacher would be going on, but she would be reading Mills and Boon's romances in the back of the class. And those nuns would come and take away the books and confiscate them, but she'd find another one to read. And so I was curious. I loved reading. I'd read anything under the sun. I think I'd been sneakily reading all my mother's. They were vaguely pornographic, I think. I've forgotten the name of that author. Anyways, he was big back then. And so this girl, the stuff interested me. So I asked her if she would lend me one. And so she made this bargain with me. She said, well, I'll lend you one, but you have to pay me for it. And I didn't have any money. So I said, pay you with what? I don't have, I didn't have, pocket money didn't exist. Allowances didn't exist in my world at that point. So she said, well, Do you have anything you can swap? And then I got this bright idea. My brother had an amazing stamp collection. So I asked her if she was interested in stamps. So I started pinching my brother's stamps to swap for these Mills and Boon's romances. And after reading 3 of them, I thought, oh my God, I want my brother's stamps back. These are all...
Oh, no.
They were repetitive.
Yeah.
There was a certain thrill in reading them, and I wasn't supposed to be reading them.
Yep.
But still, and then I started thinking, I can write one of these. And I was about 11 or 12, I wouldn't have been able to, I don't think.
Yep.
So that little ambition to be a fiction writer, a romance writer, I decided to transfer to Mr. Suresh. And I thought, well, I don't know who these authors are, but why not make him one?
Yeah. And he succeeds. He's good at it.
He is.
He's good at it, and somehow makes a decent living at it, while also being. We've talked a lot about the romance novels, and he writes romance novels, and he does well at that. He's also kind of a wandering journalist. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier about your own interest in just finding a story. Somebody got a story. Tell me a story. Mm-hmm. Sounds like there's a lot of you in Suresh.
Yes. I love the idea. I do walk a lot around Montreal. I do not engage with people, though. I don't go around chatting with them. If somebody chats with me, I'm happy to carry on a conversation, but I don't actually go and start a conversation, unlike Suresh. But for him, this becomes a substitute for his journalistic life. He does regret not being what he always wanted to be, a full-time journalist, an investigative journalist, preferably.
Yeah.
So he regrets that. He's sort of embarrassed by his whole existence as a romance writer, but also indignant that his wife should be embarrassed by it. So there's a mixture of pride and embarrassment about the thing that's making him a pretty fancy living. So the other kind of writing, his blog about wandering around the city and meeting people and talking about various interesting corners of the city, is his hanging on to his journalistic career. But for me personally, when I started this book, I had this funny, that year, I don't know what got into me. I had been living here for quite a few years in Canada and in Montreal. I think I'd been there for at least 10 years by the time I started this book. I had this funny, terrible feeling of rupture in my own being. I think it was something to do with the fact that I lost a lot of family in India, various, over a few years in close succession, people who were very, very close to me, and I couldn't be there. I hadn't seen them in a while, and it felt like a huge black hole in my life and a loss that seemed unbearable. And it also made me feel that I had lost my landscape in some sort of way. And so this book was also something to do with that sense of a landscape being missing. And so that's how it actually started, with Asha on a hospital bed. She doesn't. So I decided, okay, I don't know Montreal, I don't know Vancouver, I don't seem to know anywhere enough. So let me set her on a hospital bed, and her landscape is her body and her mind. But that became too restrictive for all kinds of reasons, because I wanted all these other characters in there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough just to have Asha carrying on a conversation with another character in the book, the hag. That became just too limiting. And actually that was another reason why I had Suresh going out and finding the landscape, discovering the landscape and owning it in this way. So for me, like most of my other books, this book has many strings of metaphor, connection, and in this case, the landscape was the thing that spread out in all kinds of ways, whether it was the physical landscape in the form of a tree, or these mental landscapes, the histories of these people, the fact that one of the characters goes walking like a flaneur
Yeah.
into the city.
There is, among Asha's losses, we learn early on that she and Suresh have lost a child. We don't get a lot of detail. That comes much later. But it, of course, is a tragedy that, I mean, for most of us, I think it's unimaginable. It does cast a kind of shadow. There was a part of me as I read thinking, when Asha's being particularly uncharitable or prickly, I thought, well, she's walking wounded. So this is a hurt person lashing out. The loss of a child is such a big thing. It's such a hard event to put in a book and to not make it central, because it isn't central. It's just one of many things that happens in a life. Tell me about managing the gravity of this loss.
Well, it was difficult because I didn't want this book to be only about that loss. And yeah, it's a huge thing. But it becomes in Asha's life one more thing to bear, one more loss to bear, in addition to the loss of her father to begin with. She's already dealt with that huge vacuum in her life. The loss of their lives as independent people, and then the loss of her child. That is the thing that propels her away from the land where her history rests into a completely different landscape. That is the thing that gives her the momentum to let go and go away. And in that process of letting go, she has to let go of the memory of the loss, although she cannot. She ends up pinning the blame for the loss on somebody else. And that is unforgivable as far as her husband is concerned, and that's another reason why they drift apart.
Yeah.
But it's also unforgivable when she starts looking back at herself. She knows it. But there are so many times when I know that I have done things that are totally wrong. I know it's wrong or bad or unforgivable, but I cannot stop myself from doing it or thinking a certain way. And I think that's true of most people. And this woman, for her, so the loss is the thing, the catalyst for their movement through the book, through the story. I didn't want to focus on just that, but it is a thread of sorrow running through the whole book. And that loss actually, that is something that preoccupies me it will always preoccupy me, the idea of the loss of a child in whatever way. I remember when I was a young mother, I was living in India then, and my son was I think he was just about a little more than a year and a half old. He had learned to walk and walk really fast. I mean, like he was running by then. So there was a busy shopping area in Bangalore. And I had gone there, and there was a little window where they sold train tickets. So I had gone there to purchase tickets to go somewhere, I can't remember where. And this little boy who was like I had to sort of negotiate this little child, the guy behind the window, my purse from which I had to take out money and then sign something and all kinds of stuff. So I had this child sort of trapped between my legs and against the wall of that little window. And somehow, in those few minutes when I was manipulating my purse and the money and all that, this child has gotten away from me, taken off, and I mean, it just happened in a matter of minutes. And in India, if you've gone to a shopping anything, it is packed. There are thousands of people. This little boy is vanished. That state of panic I was in, I can never forget, I didn't know where to go and who to ask. I was running around like a mad woman asking people if they'd seen a little boy with curly hair and a red T-shirt. There are hundreds of little boys with curly hair and red T-shirts. What kind of red T-shirt? Dark red, light red? People were asking me ridiculous questions.
Yeah.
And then I finally found him, of all places, in a shoe shop. I mean, it was sheer luck that I found him there. And that terror has remained with me. So it it was the loss of something so precious.
Yeah.
And I was busy finding ways to blame somebody for that, for losing my child. And there wasn't anybody. Who do I blame? The ticket fellow? I mean, what did he have to do with it?
One character I have to ask you about is Madame Brar. She's a fascinating peripheral character. She is Asha's landlord at first,
Yeah.
and then kind of decides she's her mentor. Who is this woman?
I don't know. I just cooked her up. No, there was this landlady we had. She was nothing like Madame Berard, but she insisted that every wall in the house had to remain white. That was her thing. Everything had to be white. So it started from that, and the rest of her is cooked up. I needed somebody who would have the same kind of attitude towards life that Asha did. And they recognize each other, right almost in the beginning. They know that they're kind of kindred souls.
She has this absurd arrangement with her husband that I loved. He's only allowed to occupy the second floor of the building of their house. When he had agreed to that, he did not realize he had bound himself physically to the upper floor because the agreement did not include the stairs or any point of egress. They figure out a way. It's also absurd. What I wanted to ask you about was that this felt like, when I was reading these sections, I thought, oh, this is a Montreal novel. This can only be a Montreal novel. It felt like and I couldn't put my finger on why, but it felt like there was comic detail in here that belongs to Mordecai Richler, belongs to Heather O'Neill. Like, we are deeply in Montreal. Does that track with your intention as a Montrealer?
No, the buildings do. I love the structure of Montreal, all those triplexes and duplexes and, the circular staircases and things, the spiral ones. We had one of those in our house too. And I love that. And this story lent itself to the housing in Montreal.
Yeah.
And the story itself, believe it or not, is something that comes from people I know. It's slightly warped, and it's actually a mother and a son who have had, both are gone now. The mother lived on the lower floor of this house, and the house actually had been willed to both the son and the mother by the mother's husband. And so when the man died, the mother refused to move out of the lower floor because it was hers. But the son was equally determined to have some share of the house, couldn't bear to live. His wife refused to live with her mother-in-law on the ground floor. And there wasn't another floor up there, so the son built himself another floor. So it was a 2-story house. And then the son and the mother had this ongoing war. The mother had a beautiful orchard behind the house with every kind of fruit tree imaginable. The son insisted that the mosquitoes from that jungle were giving him malaria. And so one day when the mother had gone out somewhere, he got the entire garden razed to the ground and covered in concrete. So all those beautiful fruiting trees were gone.
Oh my God.
I know that was a cruel thing to do. So but she was also cruel. So when she came back and discovered this massacre of her garden, she refused to let that son. She said, well, fine, if you want to play hardball, I'm going to get worse. She wouldn't allow him. There was a staircase at the back. I mean, the guy had to come down. The whole family had to come down somehow. So there were these stairs, and obviously the stairs were part of her house, her property. She said, I'm sorry, you can't use this. You'll have to fly off from your... So there's this crazy war. And this man ended up installing some kind of pulley system which avoided her part of the property and onto his house. And everybody knew about this big war that was going on. And I found it fascinating that somebody could be so mad at their own child or vice versa.
Yeah.
That they could engage in this kind of completely crazy battle.
But like a really intimately crazy battle.
Yes.
Because
yes.
neither of them is leaving.
No.
They're still choosing to be separated only by a floor or ceiling, depending on which one they are.
Exactly. And how far can you take it? Well, let's see how far you go.
So I stand corrected. This is a. It felt like a Montreal detail, but this comes from India. There's another character, a peripheral character whose voice we get directly, and it's a one-time friend of Dilip, the son of Asha. It's his one-time friend, current employer / predatory lender,
Yes.
Horatio. Why do we get his perspective even briefly? Why do we drop into his point of view for even a second?
I just liked him. I didn't feel that. I felt that he deserved a little bit of a story of his own, and why. I mean, this guy is generally harmless. He's just making a living selling pot and other kinds of drugs. So he became necessary. His story became necessary for the plot to go forward.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we'll put it that way. And you just wanted to spend time with a ne'er-do-well.
I did.
Housing, as you said, is a prominent theme in this book. What did setting this story in Montreal and Bangalore? What did that open up to you to play in that area?
I don't know if it opened up anything. I just, for me, the idea of ownership for this particular character, Asha, was important to establish. Even though she realizes at the end of her life that you can never own anything. You are a temporary blip on the landscape of the universe, really, And I think the only connection would probably be the fact that she felt she needed to, she didn't have anything in India to call her own. And this land in Montreal where she's landed up, where she's ended up, and where she's going to end her life is her personal landscape. And for her, this house, this hard-won garden, because in Montreal, growing anything is a challenge, especially with the winters we have. So, that brief period of time when the earth becomes fecund and starts sending up all these wonderful colors and life, that is important for Asha. It's part of her idea of being a part of this country, this landscape, being a part of the city in which she has found herself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We talked a lot about the prickliness of Asha. I was reminded of another protagonist from Canadian fiction, and I wonder if this connects. I thought Hagar Shipley from Margaret Lawrence's The Stone Angel.
Yeah.
Because she knows she's prickly. She knows she's difficult. We get her interior monologue.
Right.
It made me, and the moment it snapped into focus was Suresh is humming a tune.
Right.
And Asha says, for no good reason, she just has to say out loud, off key. Like, nobody, what is that? What a, like literal assassin of joy. And yet we know from her interior monologue, we know she doesn't think that's her best self, but it just comes out. And it made me think of Hagar Shipley in Margaret Lawrence's book. Does that resonance make any sense to you?
Well, now that you've mentioned it, it does. To be honest, I wasn't thinking of Hagar Shipley when I was writing the book, although I loved that book. I really did. But Asha comes out of many people in my own family. I have lots of female characters in my family who are characters. They are strong-willed. They are assassins of joy. And they don't mean to be. They just blurt out the first thing that's in their head without thinking of the consequences in terms of hurt feelings and, just it might have been smarter to just keep your mouth shut. But Asha, and also this is an old relationship. This is an aging relationship, hers and Suresh's. And even though he has still retained that kindness and that politeness that he's known for, Asha has just gone the other direction. She's become whatever she doesn't do as a human resources person, she allows herself, she gives herself permission to do with her own family, Yeah. So she's blunt to a fault.
Your previous book, Tell It to the Trees, was published in 2011. With this new book out in the world, and as we speak, it is publication day. How do you look back on that interval of time between the publication of that book and when you began working on Asha in her garden?
I don't know. My life has always felt busy. It's been, I do a whole lot of other things. I'm a visual artist, so I think I gave myself permission to create a lot of art. And I continue to do that alongside writing, except that I've not stopped. I mean, I have my studio and my office in the same space. And my desk is also a studio for paper, arts works on paper. And that not just writing stories, but also making art with watercolors and pen and ink and charcoal and so on and so forth. So there's this symbiotic relationship. For a while, I was indulging myself, taking the road not taken, because for me, it's always been a toss-up between visual arts and writing. And I love doing both. And I think I was sort of hungry for the life to hold art material in my hands. It's been traveling with me for a long time, under beds and inside cupboards, rolls of paper and canvas and paints and so on and so forth. So I was doing some of that, and I was just trying to figure out where I wanted to go next with my new novel, or what I wanted to do. And of course, life intervened. Like I said, I think I might have mentioned it. There were a lot of losses in my life. Lots of family died, and I found it incredibly difficult to recover from some of those losses. And then we became empty nesters, and just the idea of, I started wondering about whether my son was going to be interested in our roots and our past and our history. And that, in fact, became the reason I wrote this book in a funny kind of way. It's hard to explain how all these things translate into a story, all these things that were bubbling away inside me as a person, and in terms of story in my brain. It's all interconnected and intertwined in ways I cannot even explain.
I think that's as good an explanation as we're going to get. I'm glad it bubbled out into being a book. I'm glad that I was able to read it. Anita, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
I have been speaking with Anita Rau Badami, author of Asha in Her Garden. Find Anita's other books at kobo.com/conversation. There's a link in the show notes for you. Follow us in your podcast player to catch every episode. And if you enjoyed this one, reach out to the brightest reader you know and tell them all about it, just like a plant reaches towards sunlight in a garden. Kobo in Conversation was produced and hosted this time by me, Nathan Maharaj. Thank you for listening.